Chapter 16 1-7-15-1-27. That's a lot of cameras. Margot gestured to a cylindrical rod jutting out above the entrance to the subway station. Stacked upon each other and pointed every odd direction, at least a dozen surveillance devices were capturing their every move. Liz laughed. Feels like home. Do you think they can hear us too? Jordan asked. Why do you think we're speaking Polish? Margot nodded. Jordan shrugged. Glad I'm not a... He caught himself, recognizing their danger. He mouthed the letters C-O-M. We know what you meant, Johnny shot him. Not here. Jordan glared at him as they turned to enter the station, refraining from using one of the hand gestures they had been specifically warned not to use. Xander dropped them off 2 blocks east. The drive was far more awkward than even Kent had anticipated. Knowing Emma and Johnny would be milking their separation for the mission, he had expected the goodbye kiss. He had not expected he and Liz to be dragged into their last-minute prayer session. Watching Emma and Johnny pretend to act noble and godly to amplify their own self-righteousness was worse than just watching them together. Kent despised God, hated even the idea of him, given everything his life had so far entailed. If there was a world out there created by an all-powerful, omniscient being, it certainly wasn't this one. The best part of China that Kent had noticed so far? He hadn't seen a church in days. They had been only minutes away from the drop-off when Emma crept to the back of the van and sat down between Liz and Johnny. Kent had rolled his eyes and turned his attention to the foggy view outside the windows, when he heard Johnny say, I want Kent to join us. Everyone but Xander turned their attention on the pair. Kent didn't hold back with vulgarity in his response. Why do we need Kent? Emma chirped, and for once he agreed with her. Johnny stared at him, as if he were struggling to find a real justification. He stammered. I want to pray with him. Again, Kent dropped the word, and Xander's eyes briefly popped into the rearview mirror. Awkward glances from around the back of the van centered in on him, instead of Johnny, as if he was the one who had started it. The tension was broken by a small but firm voice no one had expected. I'll join you. Em and Johnny both turned to Liz. What? I'll pray with you, she repeated. Might be good to get a little God with us on the mission anyway. Everyone's eyes had shifted away from Kent. Emma's eyes narrowed. I thought you didn't believe in God. I've never said that, she denied. I'm just English. She turned herself to face them and made a grand gesture of folding her hands together. Em and Johnny exchanged momentary shrugs. We'll join you, Margot added, pulling a surprised Jordan with her to sit on the edge of their bench. Emma's raised eyebrow led her to add, Use all the help we can get, I suppose. Occam's razor and all. Pascal's wager, Johnny corrected. Whatever. The eyes all turned back to Kent, and he felt himself outnumbered. Liz grabbed his hand and gave him a long look, as if to say, Please? For me? Fine, he grumbled, placing his fingertips together before Emma forced the squad to hold hands. Whatever followed, Kent could not have cared less to hear. His ears buzzed with an emotion he could hardly recognize as self-pity, and found himself peeking silently out the windows as the others kept their eyes closed and their heads down. Someone said something about safety. Another said something about everything going to plan. At the end, 5 voices all said Amen in unison, while Kent just took his hands back and fell against the wall again. That's when they pulled up to the station. One final time, Xander turned to join them in the back of the van, activating a projection screen and walking them through the mission and its variables one last time, as if any of them needed reminding. He double-checked everyone's pockets for the correct possessions, including Johnny's backpack containing the binder filled with the legislation concepts. Then Johnny kissed Emma harder than Kent had ever seen. As if in response to a challenge, Jordan then dipped Margot and kissed her too, causing Xander to finally declare a ceasefire. Kent turned to Liz and joked, Are we supposed to do that too? He could have sworn she blushed. All right, Xander finalized, activating their cavity mics. No English until you're back in the van. He and Emma crawled back to the front and took their places behind the dash. Green light. The group of 5 exited at Yonganli Station, several stops down the line. To make their steps as traceable to the false narrative as possible, they'd driven several miles out of the way to the east, where their supposed school was located, and also allowing Xander and Emma to enclose on their location privately in the van. The squad's emergence not throwing up any red flags to the dozens of surrounding embassies. Of course, their exit from the vehicle was still probably throwing up flags with the Chinese government. This had been expected, but by the time anyone watching the thousands upon thousands of cameras in the city pieced together their trail to the Polish embassy, they'd be long gone from Beijing, and hopefully on their way back to the United States. The appearance of dozens of skyscrapers distracted Kent from thinking about cameras. In all of their runs, even when entering from the outside, little detail had been put in the features beyond their immediate path. Surrounding the embassy on every side were buildings taller than Kent was used to even in Brooklyn, dwarfing the scale of their mission by the sheer busyness of the city around them. He felt small and insignificant. Realizing they were the only white people for blocks around, locals staring at them as they walked, that feeling of insecurity only increased. They still had several blocks to go. By the time they reached Written Road, there was less than half an hour until their scheduled time slot with the ambassador. The sight of the embassy was a welcome relief, as was the reappearance of the missions van, parked where it always was down the road near the corner with Genoa. Xander reappeared in their ears. "Can everyone hear fine?" he mumbled through their teeth. Everyone turned to Johnny, their designated captain, and he gave a thumbs up. "All good," he replied, reverberating through Kent's jaw as well. Emma added her voice to the mix. "Guards are Chinese," she noticed through whatever surveillance device they had hacked into. "Start in Polish," Xander instructed. "Switch if you have to." They approached the entry gate as they had 100 times. The two guards looked up from their post apprehensively. "Students from Orange Prep," Johnny started. "Here to see Ambassador Chemiskey." The men continued eyeing the group cautiously. "We have a 10:30 meeting scheduled." The guards looked between each other, then back to the group. Johnny was halfway through repeating the instruction in Chinese, before one of the guards interrupted him. "Yeah, we heard you the first time," he muttered, also in Chinese. "Passports," the other instructed, calling them forward. "Warsaw?" the first interrogated, taking Kent's fake ID and peering through the pages. Kent was desperate to do this part in Polish. "Zabki," he switched. "I was born in Warsaw, but I grew up in Zabki." The man handed him back the document with a dismissive look on his face. He reverted to Chinese. "You know, you should really learn the language if you're going to live here." Kent shrugged. "It wasn't my choice," he stated, finding his way between the two tongues. "I miss home." The first guard ushered them through a metal detector, which failed to register anything out of the ordinary. Johnny passed the second guard his bag, and the man took a brief look inside each pocket before passing them on, completely failing to recognize the USB drive sitting amongst a collection of pens. A silent sigh of relief reverberated through the squad. He escorted them through the courtyard to the main entrance. Inside, an uncanny duplicate of the building they were so used to now surrounded them, the cube-made training floor projections now replaced by the real thing. Kent had unreasonably feared something new and different, but aside from the people inside, every desk, chair, and computer was in precisely the same spot they had come to know. "At the end," the guard said to Johnny. "Check in with her." An older woman with large blonde curls stood behind a counter emblazoned with the Polish coat of arms. "May I help you?" she asked passively, showing off a thick southern accent. Johnny stepped forward. "A meeting with the ambassador," he voiced, handing her his passport. She handed it back immediately. "They checked you in at security," she dismissed. "You're here about the open border policy, no?" All five gave a nod. Another receptionist to their left grumbled. "All of you are here to meet with the ambassador?" "All of us read the proposal," Liz snarked. "The embassy approved it when he set up the meeting," Johnny defended. "If that's not okay, a few of us can wait outside the office." The blonde receptionist shot her partner a dirty look. "It's perfectly fine," she approved. "Just unusual to have a group this large without other dignitaries involved." Johnny gave a forgiving smile. "It's just a proposal." A thin man in a gray suit came to the desk to escort them upstairs. As soon as they were out of the view of the front windows, Xander's voice echoed through their faces. "Nice work," he began. "We're in the blind now. No audible response until the upper floor is secure. You're on your own." Johnny clicked his tongue against his teeth once to let the van know that they had heard. The building's elevator opened into a small reception hallway, which itself led to the familiar square waiting room. A copy of the reception desk from downstairs was manned by a single woman with thick black glasses. Their escort called to her across the floor. "They're here for a 10:30 with the ambassador," the man said, turning back to the squad. "Make yourselves comfortable. Snacks and refreshments are on the back table. Toilets are through that door there. Sonia can help you with anything else you might need." "Thanks," they said in succession. Kent checked his watch. 10 minutes until their scheduled time. Johnny's voice shadowed itself. "How are you guys feeling?" It was one of the few things he could say that matched both situations. Kent shot up a thumb, feeling anxious, but in a positive way. Everything had so far gone to plan. He was eager to just get the job done and be on their way back to Julian. "One last pee break," was announced, removing herself from the lobby. "I'll join you," Margot echoed. The boys sat there silently while they waited for the girls to return. Kent kept peering around the room, imagining the stillness of it all disrupted by a simple fire drill. He turned to Jordan. "What do you see downstairs?" Jordan looked up from his fake phone. "Calm," he declared. "Almost too much." Xander returned in their ears. "Keep it focused, guys. Don't give anyone reason to question something they might overhear." Kent closed his mouth and pulled out his own phone. It felt odd in his hand, so much larger than the little device he was used to, and significantly more powerful. He alone in the group was without an iPhone. and now matching the rest, figured he could have spent days sitting there learning every little quirk. The falsified pictures of him with artificial friends and family gave him the odd sensation that he'd already done so. 5 minutes. The girls returned, looking as anxious as he felt. Liz looked at the refreshment table for a long moment before second-guessing the idea of food, instead choosing a bottle of water and downing half of it before she had settled in her seat. Kent became painfully aware of his ticking coming from an ornate grandfather clock near one of the office doors. He stared at the face, then down to the pendulum, finding himself lost in a trance as it swung back and forth. Finally, Johnny grunted. Kent looked back up to the clock's face. 10:32. All 5 poked their heads around to see if anyone was waiting to escort them, but everyone on the floor remained busy in their own business. Xander must have been thinking the same thing as he returned to their comms. "Normal business procedure," he warned. "Stay patient. Jordan, any reason to question the wait?" Jordan sat still again, peering downstairs, then clicked his tongue twice. "Good," Xander replied. Emma's voice came through for the first time. "No one on any rooftops within sightlines," she announced. "Nothing in the neighboring windows that we can see. All heavy weaponry is on the ground, and none of it on your side of the embassy." She paused. "Looks like you guys are in the clear." "For now," Xander warned again. Interrupting the deep breath Kent could feel himself sharing with the others. "Stay on alert. Don't let your guard down too early." Just as he finished, the door from the ambassador's personal hallway opened, and a tall woman in a sleek black dress came sauntering toward them, the ambassador's private secretary. "Here we go," Margot whispered. "You're all from the preparatory school, no?" The woman approached, shaking each of them in turn. "So sorry about the wait. The ambassador had an important call to finish prior to your meeting. I hope you don't mind." "Not at all," Jordan muttered. "Thanks for giving us the time," Margot offered. "Of course," the woman replied. "Something as important as this? Stronger relationships with our international allies is exactly what the president wants for Poland, even if it includes a more open border policy. It's great to see young people like yourselves taking the initiative." She led them through the familiar hallway and past her own neighboring office, before stepping outside the final door. She knocked 3 times. "Come in," the ambassador's voice droned from the other side. The private secretary opened the door and allowed them into the space they knew better than the backs of their own hands. Save for an extra set of chairs brought in to fit their numbers, and the choice of flowers on the table, everything was exactly as it had appeared in both Tylersville and Juliang. Even the coffee stain on the rug tucked under the sofa at an awkward angle to keep it hidden from sight. Behind his desk, the ambassador had his attention planted to a large monitor projecting data schematics from his private laptop, which was plugged into a docking station beside it. "Sir, your 10:30 is here," the woman announced. "The students from Orange Prep regarding open travel with China." "Yes," he replied slowly, still eyeing his computer screen for the very few seconds he had left to give. "Right. Thank you, Julia." The woman gestured them to the temporary seating arrangements at the center of the office, before leaving them to the ambassador, who finally took his attention away from the graphs and walked to the meeting area. The ambassador was a small, bald man with a gray goatee. His circular glasses matched the shape of his round head. He stood with a rather awkward posture as he shook each of their hands, as if he were recovering from some kind of back surgery. He paused when Liz introduced herself. "Braun." He noted her fake last name. "You're not Polish." Liz stiffened. "I'm a bit of everything," she defended. "Dad's from Germany. His dad was from Morocco, but I was born in Warsaw." The ambassador nodded. "Pardon my curiosity," he apologized, directing them to their seats and leaving Liz's ambiguous backstory be. "So, open borders," he continued. "Not what most would expect from this new administration." "Not in Poland, sir," Jordan deflected. "Just with our trusted allies." The ambassador stopped his gaze on Jordan's face, clearly staring at his eyes with a skeptical expression. Johnny was quick to add, "Like the Union, but controlled by our ambassadors to benefit the Polish people above all else." The ambassador frowned. "In other words, put more work on my shoulders." Expand your administration," Jordan replied. "Employ a larger work staff. Build a newer, larger embassy." The frown remained. "What's wrong with this one?" "Nothing," Margot added. "We're just broadening the approach to making the system work more efficiently." The ambassador shot his concern in her direction. "Paid for out of whose pockets?" he rejected. "The zloty is already sitting in the shadow of the euro. We've just abandoned dozens, if not hundreds, of private trade partnerships, affecting our relationships with our neighbors and now former allies. Why do you think anyone would buy into this new plan when it benefits our citizens over anyone else's?" The 5 stared around at one another, clearly not expecting such hostility right off the bat. Johnny opened his mouth to retort, but the ambassador hung his head and sighed. "I apologize," he backtracked. "My mind is not in the right space to give you a fair audience. I just finished up a meeting trying to salvage our trade partnership with the ASEAN. The president's policies are making it impossible for my office to do our jobs efficiently. The five again crossed glances, this time out of surprised concern. "Sir, I don't," Johnny began. "I don't give a damn if this office is bugged," the ambassador raised. "You kids aren't blind enough to miss what Chervinsky is doing to our country. No one is taking us seriously on a global scale anymore. I'm half tempted to leak classified information just to get back at him. It's a miracle the United States or Great Britain haven't completely cut political ties with us yet." The look on his face was so utterly stressed, Ken figured he would have started pulling his own hair out if he had any left. "Did you know he's paying the Emiratis billions for secret biological testing on their own slaves?" His eyes widened, realizing how much he had uttered out loud. "I'm sorry," he spat. "I should not have said that. Please don't let that leave this room." Xander appeared in their ears again. "Johnny, keep him on track. Don't let him rattle until you're forced to sign NDAs. Johnny sat up straighter. "Sir," Johnny interrupted, taking a glance at Margot and Liz, who nodded, agreeing that he should play the angle. "None of us agree with that either. That's why we're here." He tossed the binder filled with their plan on the table between them. "Let us help you get back at him in a way that doesn't threaten your life or your reputation." The ambassador picked up the papers and began reading through the outline. "Liberalism through the lens of self-benefit," he deciphered. "I love it. Go on." Johnny pulled out a second binder and walked the ambassador through the plan, while Margot sat at his side and pointed to the major points of the legislation. With each passing page, the ambassador seemed less focused on his previous worries and more engaged with what the squad was proposing. Everything was going exactly to plan. "I'll admit, as ambassador, I haven't encountered these issues in a very long time," he said, approaching the end of the binder. "But I can see the frustration with the system in place." "Do you think it's something the administration would go for?" Liz asked. "It's certainly worth a try," he admitted. "The way you kids have built it is genius. If we approach it the way you've noted, I think there's a good chance it'll fly under the president's radar." His face turned suddenly grim. "Problem is, I don't know how much longer I'll be in this position. I haven't been an outspoken critic of the president, but he's cleaning house a lot faster than any of us fence riders expected. Realistically, I could get it on his desk in Warsaw in a few weeks' time. Whether or not he reads it is a completely different matter." "What about the same?" Margot questioned out loud. "You kids are smarter than that," he dismissed. "Even if I pushed it through both houses, which are now stuffed with pretenders even more fascist than Chervinsky, it'd push the time to his desk back months, by which time I may be gone completely, and then the bill would be scrapped. The best option is to go straight to the desk." A shrieking siren blared through the office, shaking all 6 of them in their seats. A bright light above the doorway flashed off and on in perpetuity. "What is that?" Liz shouted. The ambassador barely had time to utter, "Fire alarm!" before the first set of armed security came bursting through the door. "Sir, you need to come with us," one said, finger dangerously close to the trigger on his rifle. The ambassador did exactly as he was told, following the man out the door while the other trailed behind. "What about us?" Jordan shouted. "Stay here," the second guard added vaguely before exiting the room completely. Jordan looked out into the hallway, then turned to Kent. "Now!" Kent turned to the wall left of the desk and found a hidden door in the wall, leading to the server closet. Then he hid inside. It was uncomfortably quiet there, but he could still hear the alarm blaring loudly through the 4 other microphones still out in the office. "Eyes, Jordan," came Xander's voice. "First scene," Jordan replied. "Evacuating everyone else first. Where's the private secretary?" Jordan took a moment to respond. "Bathroom. Should be the last one left with us." "All right, keep a lookout for her. Johnny, do you have the drive?" "Ready to go when we're safe," Johnny replied. "You're doing great so far," Xander encouraged. "Keep it up." Kent stood in the dark silence for what felt like minutes, waiting for the guards to show. Finally, he could hear a pair of heavy footsteps coming from down the hall. "Johnny, how many?" 2 clicks. "Are they armed?" 1 click. "Come with us," Kent heard one say, filing the others out of the office. A few more seconds passed. "Hold on." The other guard paused. "There should be 5 of you." "He's in the toilet," Margot said loudly. "I got him," the first announced, and Kent could hear his footsteps falling away from the others. He waited for the word to burst to the open. Johnny said it clear as day. "Coming!" Kent flew out of the closet door and rushed past the others, who were now wresting the pistol away from the one guard. He sprinted through the lobby and spotted the bathroom door closing, the other guard barely inside. Before he reached it, Kent heard Liz's voice loudly, in English. "Kent, wait, he's got to—" The second guard must have heard the struggle out in the lobby, as he returned from the bathroom with his weapon raised. To Kent's horror, the man's pistol was still attached to his hip. The gun pointed at Kent's chest was an assault rifle. A blast of air clipped by his ear, and the man flipped to the ground in a cloud of purple haze. Kent kicked the rifle out of his hands and began swinging his fist wildly at the man, who struggled for a few seconds before being knocked completely unconscious. For good measure, Kent stomped the man in the face. He stood up out of breath, realizing his hands were completely bloodied. He leaned over to unholster the pistol from the man's hip, then picked up the rifle sitting diagonally on the floor. "He's out?" Johnny indicated to Kent's guard as he finished blindfolding and hog-tying the other. "Like a light," Kent replied confidently, still feeling the adrenaline flowing through his arms. "Margot, help me grab him," Jordan commanded, and the pair made their way toward the bathrooms. "You two, take care of this one," Johnny concluded, taking the rifle from Kent. "Get him to the secretary's office." He left Liz and Kent to drag the man away while he rushed off to the server closet with the ambassador's laptop. "Nice work," came Xander again. Jordan and Margot dragged the other man to the second office, and the two girls took their places, unarmed beside the door while Jordan and Kent made their way back to the lobby, pistols in hand. "Elevators are disabled," Emma announced. "Automatic locks are forced too." "Still get bars on all the exits," Xander demanded. "Nobody comes in or out of the second floor until we're out of there." Jordan turned to Kent. "I got the back." Kent snuck behind the reception desk and dug around to find a series of computer cables. It wasn't ideal, but they were still an obstacle if he could manage to tie them tight enough. Jordan returned from the rear emergency exit, having secured the door with handcuffs, turning his effort to the lobby sofa, which he helped Kent drag to block the primary stairwell. The boys shared a high five when the door was finally obstructed. The lobby felt eerily quiet. The lockdown had gone much cleaner than usual. "Hey, where's the private secretary?" Kent asked. "Oh, shoot." Jordan perked, raising his pistol in alarm. He turned toward the bathroom. "She's not there." Xander sounded miffed on the other end. "What do you mean she's not there?" Jordan ran to the bathroom. Kent could hear him kicking down stall doors. "I mean, she's not in there," he repeated. "She's not in the building anymore. I can't see her." Kent shrugged. "She must have escaped before the guards came to get us," he offered. Jordan nodded, taking this as a perfectly reasonable explanation. "She's not out here," Emma dissented. Kent narrowed his eyebrows. "What? What do you mean she's not out there?" Jordan cursed. "She has to be." "She's not," Emma repeated. "Facial recognition on the cameras can't find her anywhere." "She has to be in the building," Xander echoed. "Well, she's not," Jordan defended. "I would feel it if she was." "She has to be," Xander doubled down. "Find her." Jordan grunted. "Margot," he barked. "Come with me. Liz can guard the bodies on her own." "You don't call them bodies," Margot replied, walking to the lobby. "They're still alive, you know." "Can't you stay patrolling the doors?" Xander commanded. "Take a look out the windows when you get a chance, too. See if there's anything we missed." Jordan and Margot disappeared into the bathrooms. Kent marched to the barricaded stairwell and listened for any movement, but could barely hear over the sound of the alarms. "Are you sure it's the same system we practiced?" he asked. "It's freaking loud in here." "Exact same," Emma rejected. "I mute the speakers on the second floor. It mutes them in the entire building." "Keep them going," Xander instructed. Not for the first time. "We want the building to seem as normal as possible for as long as possible." Kent sauntered over to the office behind the reception desk, much smaller than the ambassador's, with a single shuttered window facing west. Doing just as he had been instructed, Kent kept his body behind the wall and poked his head around the window frame, opening the blinds just enough to see through the surrounding buildings. "No one on the rooftops," he recited. "Still no additional windows. There's movement on the streets, though. People are starting to notice." "Good," Xander replied. "Johnny, how are the files coming?" Johnny didn't reply immediately. "Johnny?" Xander doubled. "Fine," he said finally. 15%. Signal still strong through Juliang?" "As far as we can tell," Xander announced. "Good pace, keep it up." Kent exited the first office and moved past the bathroom corridor to the next one, ready to do the same thing. A scream permeated through Kent's cheek. "Xander!" "Liz, what's wrong?" he shouted in response. He's not breathing," she stuttered fearfully. "One of the guards, he's foaming at the mouth and—" Kent sprinted across the lobby to the office. Sure enough, one of the guards was seizing violently on the floor. "Johnny!" Kent breathed. "Johnny, you know about seizures. What do we—" "No!" Xander's voice echoed like a cannon blast. "Johnny, you stay put and finish what you're doing. Liz, what happened?" I don't know," she sobbed, terrified. "One moment he was out cold and then he just started—" "Did anything happen when you guys took him down?" Xander asked. "Your effect has never caused anyone—" "No!" Liz shrieked. "At the worst, it's knocked them out, but this—" "He was mine," Kent breathed, horrified. An awkward silence reverberated through their teeth. "That's the one I took down." Liz looked up at him with a look of disbelief. "What happened?" Xander repeated. The image in Kent's eyes flashed backward like a movie trailer, and he watched himself bring down his right foot square on the bridge of the guard's nose. He hesitated. He looked up at Liz. I don't know. It was completely normal, just like we practiced." The man continued shaking at their feet. "Well, there's nothing we can do about it now," Xander issued. "Leave him. Get back to the windows." "What?" Kent shouted. No, we can't just leave him." "You have to," Xander scolded. his voice cutting through again like steel. "Whatever happens, happens. You have a job to do." We can't just let him die like that," Kent screamed. His voice was close to breaking. "We can and we will," came Xander's reply. Kent felt his stomach fall out from inside him. His face turned gray. "Kent," Liz said softly. He turned to see her no longer horrified, but sympathetic. I didn't mean..." "It's okay," she calmed, pulling him into a hug. "Just go do your job. I'll take care of him." She spun him around and pushed him back toward the third office. He stood there awkwardly, not wanting to make a single step further, when Jordan's voice came through the comms and snapped him back to the mission. "Hold on," he said cautiously. "What?" Margot replied. "Did you find her?" Xander asked aloud. "No," Jordan denied. "Xander, there's something weird going on with the back stairwell." "What do you mean?" "Like, it's..." He paused. It's like it's changing shape. I feel like we're back on the floor again. I can't see into the stairwell." "Let me see," Margot insisted, and Ken could see her trying to look through the door's window at the end of the hall. "Leave it," Xander instructed. "Stay on task." "I think she might be in there," Jordan countered. "There's someone down there." "It could be armed assault," Xander warned. "It's not," Emma argued. "We'd be able to tell from out here, wouldn't we?" Jordan huffed, then said something to Margot in French. "I'm going to check it out." "No!" Xander shouted. "Keep that door closed. Margot, return to the office." But Jordan didn't listen. "Jordan, you regroup with Kent and check the windows. Forget about the..." He gestured toward the handcuffs on the door handle, and without hesitation, Margot sliced them open with her claws. "Jordan!" Xander screamed again. "Stick to the plan!" The door was already shutting behind them as the pair tiptoed into the back stairwell. There was another silence. Then Jordan's voice cut through. "Hey, yo, what the..." Margot screamed so loudly Xander must have muted their comms. A loud crashing sound boomed through the building, followed by the unmistakable sound of gunfire. Kent sprinted back to Liz and slammed the hallway door behind him, locking it from the inside. "What's happening?" Liz shrieked, atop an already busy communications line filled with Xander's shouting. Kent rushed past her to grab a chair from the private secretary's office, barricading the hallway door and hardly noticing that the guard on the ground had once again gone still. The gunfire stopped. "Margot!" Xander continued shouting. "Jordan, where are you?" "Oh God, Xander, look!" came Emma's voice. He finally took a breath to calm his shouting, then returned in a calm but severe tone. "Everyone, they're here," Xander warned. "Who's here?" Kent yelled, his hands sweating nervously around the grip of the pistol. "SWAT team," Xander replied. "They know something's going on." I'm at 60%, Johnny claimed. "I still need 5 minutes at least." Xander swore loudly in their ears. "Jordan! Margot, where are you?" he repeated loudly, unmuting their channels to the sound of static. "They're not dead," Emma said gravely, as much to herself as the others. "Their vitals are still normal. Elevated, but normal." Xander growled. "Jordan! Margot, if you can hear me, get out of there as soon as possible. You've got company coming through both stairwells." He turned to the others. "The rest of you barricade both hallway doors and stay put in the ambassador's office. Liz, whatever you do, stay away from the windows." Liz looked up at Kent before responding. "Why, are the snipers?" "Not that we could see," claimed Emma, her breath becoming constricted. "Just do as you're told until you get the green light," Xander demanded. "I'm not taking any more chances." Liz looked down at the two bodies on the office floor. One was plainly breathing. "Leave them," Kent steeled. "Get to the other office." They drove a second chair underneath the other to further secure the first door, then locked themselves in the ambassador's office and began piling furniture behind the second. Johnny was still standing wide-eyed in the doorway of the server room, frantically sliding his hand across the laptop's trackpad. "Office secure," Kent rallied. "Good," Xander sighed. "Stay put and hold it down until the task is complete. You've got a lot of company on the way." "What about the window?" Liz muttered. "It's still clear from our end," Emma stated. "A single guard with a pistol. Just starting to sense the situation. Kent, keep an eye on him." Kent didn't have to do his usual routine of hiding behind the frame. The ambassador's window was one-way glass. He planted himself square behind the desk and refitted his hand on the pistol, sweeping his eyes on the rooftops and sightlines surrounding the embassy. So far as he could see, there was nothing troubling about their only remaining escape route. "Liz, get in the corner," Johnny scolded. Kent turned to see Liz standing in the middle of the office, hands aglow, ready to take on the next wave of guards to come through the door. "Stay out of sightlines," Xander seconded. "No matter what happens, Liz, you stay put as long as possible." Yeah, she said dejectedly. "Sorry for thinking I could help." Emma's voice shrilled through their comms. "There they are!" "Where?" Emma was clearly pointing to something only Xander could see. "What is it?" Liz asked. "Jordan and Margot?" Kent followed. There was no confirmation on the other end. "Oh," Xander sighed. "Oh, that's not good." Liz shot Kent a worried look. "Xander, what's going..." She was interrupted by a muffled banging from down the hallway. The reinforcements had reached the first door. "They know we're in here now," Kent warned those in the van. "Are we still safe on the ground?" "You've got eyes," Liz reminded him. "I meant from the front," he urged. "Have they started sending troops our way yet?" "You're in the clear," Xander grunted. "Jordan, Margot, if you can hear me, stick to the fence line. You're inconspicuous as long as no one sees the gun." The line was silent with static again. "I don't think they can hear you," noted Emma. Xander swore again, only to be interrupted by the banging in the hallway growing louder. The door must have been close to breaking down. "What are you doing?" Kent turned from the window to see Liz back on her feet, still in the corner but eyeing Johnny maliciously. "What do you mean?" Johnny replied. "Your hands!" she noted, irritated. "Why'd you stop whacking?" Kent looked down at the laptop. She was right. For the first time he could remember, Johnny had stopped moving his hands across the trackpad. The first door exploded. Shouting echoed down the hallway. One of the new guards plainly shouted, "I've got 2 bodies!" in Chinese before banging started on the final door. "It's uploading," Johnny said. "I'm waiting for the files to finish sending. 2 more minutes, then we're in the clear." Liz stepped forward. "You bloody liar!" she screamed. "That's not how it's ever worked before! You're not transferring files, you're deleting them!" "Liz, get back in the corner," Johnny commanded. "You're done, aren't you?" she growled, denying his request. "Johnny, what is she—" Kent started. "Kent, go back to the window!" Johnny shouted. "Stay in position, guys," Xander doubled. "Johnny, how much time is left?" Johnny looked down at the laptop. 90 seconds. Liz laughed out loud. "Xander, he's a bloody liar!" The pounding on the door became faster, more intense. Liz turned back to Johnny. "You've been finished for ages, haven't you?" "Johnny, what's she talking about?" Ken asked again. Johnny threw his hands up in confusion. I have no idea," he claimed. "The files are almost done sending back to Juliang. Just stay put until we—" A crack split in the doorframe as the guards began battering a ram against the other side. The furniture barricading the door bounced back several inches. "You've kept us here like sitting ducks," she cried, turning to the window. "Kent, we need to—" "No!" Johnny shouted. "Kent, we need to stay put until they give us the green light. Liz, get back in the corner. We can't risk you getting hurt." Other voices were coming through their comms, but with the banging in the hallway and the blood beating through his ears, Kent could only focus on Johnny and Liz. A huge explosion of wood rattled the office. The door was being ripped apart. "Liz, what are you—" Kent started, but his voice failed him when he looked at her face. A wave of understanding flushed her expression as she bounced her eyes between Kent and Johnny. "Oh, you bloody Judas," she whimpered. Johnny held up his hand for peace. Liz's own hands had grown purple again, ready to strike. "Liz," Kent breathed, his hand tight around the pistol. "What's going on?" The door splintered again. He expected her to explode. Instead, she took one last shameful look at Johnny, took a deep breath, and put down her hands. She walked over to the window next to Kent. "I'm not going to give them the satisfaction," she whispered, standing right in front of him and pushing him up against the wall. She leaned in and kissed him hard on the lips. "I love you," she whispered. Kent barely had time to register what had happened when he saw the first guard burst through the door, rifle raised, pointed directly at him and Liz. Then he felt the purple blast hit him square in the stomach, propelling him backward as he tripped over the window frame. The first shot hit Liz square in the back. He heard Johnny scream. The image of the second shot going through her head burned itself onto his eyes as Kent fell. He hit the hedge with a thud, stunned and silent, as red rain followed him from the sky.